Dear all, good morning. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to the first event in our webinar series on climate action in agri-food system in Central Eastern Europe. My name is Frelih Larsen. I'm a senior fellow at Ecologic Institute, a not-for-profit research institute in Berlin, but I'm based in Slovenia, my home country. I'll be moderating this webinar series. The webinar series is part of a project funded by the Robert Bosch Foundation, focusing on capacity building for nature-based climate action in Central Eastern Europe. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Foundation for their support. By way of introduction, I'd like to explain a little bit about what is the motivation and framing for this webinar series. And we're all aware of the scale of the challenge. It's significant and at times daunting. Farmers feel these impacts more than any other economic sector due to their exposure to biophysical factors and their often very precarious economic situation. And the severity of impacts this past summer was felt across the region. It's clear that the way we produce and consume food has to change substantially. Because we are living in a new normal and need to improve our resilience in the face of the climate crisis, and because the current way of doing things means we're doing too little to reduce emissions and increase removals. In Central Eastern Europe, emissions accounted under agriculture in the national inventories have not been declining. Since 2010, they have actually increased slightly. The removal potential is compromised also by the climate impact and has dropped in recent years, also in the region. This is the green bottom line, which depicts LULUCF removals. And recent studies show that we have now exceeded 6 of 9 planetary boundaries, not just climate, but also biodiversity, water, phosphorus, and nitrogen boundaries are exceeded. These are closely connected, and agri-food systems a key driver behind these trends. There's growing scientific and societal recognition that agroecology offers a key entry point to addressing these challenges. Agroecology is an alternative paradigm to high input, high output production model dependent on external synthetic inputs. It has 2 basic elements. It's about agricultural and landscape management, whereby ecological principles are applied to the management of agricultural systems and practices. So it's really about working with nature and ecological processes, moving in terms of ambition from smaller individual changes which improve efficiency on conventional farms, to substitution with agroecological practices, all the way to the farm system and landscape system redesign. Agroecology also calls for changes within the broader food system in which farms are embedded, so that changes in farm practices go hand in hand with other changes, such as changes in economic relations, farmers' economic position, or consumers' access to healthy food. Keywords such as food waste or diet change become important in this context. Agroecology is very much about a mindset shift, a rethinking of what agri-food systems deliver, away from a singular focus on maximizing yield and delivering cheap food to how production and consumption can deliver optimal outcomes, working together at systemic level, positive and optimal outcomes for climate mitigation and resilience, as well as broader ecosystem services and human nutrition. In this way, agroecology offers a possible roadmap for sustainability transition in agri-food systems. And we'll hear from speakers today about what agroecology can look like in practice and how it can deliver these benefits. Now, despite the scientific consensus and growing societal recognition of agroecology, we've also seen quite a strong and systematic push to contest and undermine the implementation of farm-to-fork strategy, the flagship EU policy that at its core aims to contribute to sustainability transition and scaling of agroecology. The contestation really centers around the argument that farm-to-fork implementation would threaten food security and also further threaten the economic survival of European farmers. For example, It argues that restricting synthetic pesticides would lead to high yield drops at times when pest and disease pressure is growing stronger, or that requiring space for biodiversity would lead to limiting productive area that should be used for food production, or that farmers would only be faced with additional costs and restrictions. At the core of this narrative is about technological solutions, from investments in machinery, robotics, digitalization, to new breeding techniques. To meet the current challenges, of course, some technological solutions may be part of the mix that we need. Technology has a place, but technology is far from a silver bullet, and wrong technologies also carry risk. Emission intensity reductions, for example, do not necessarily result in absolute emission reductions. There are potential risks from technologies such as low-emission slurry application for subsoil compaction, and open questions about the effects, for example, of nitrification inhibitors on soil biodiversity. Heavy capital investments and technological solutions can further lock in farmers to ways of farming that's not future-proof, further driving a conflict between their economic survival and climate, biodiversity, and societal goals. These limitations really further reinforce the need to place agroecological approaches and agri-food system transition at the heart of our response to the climate crisis. And this really gives the context. This context really gives the motivation and framing for this webinar series. Why do we focus on Central Eastern Europe? We think that agroecology offers a real opportunity for the countries in the region to build on the natural capital and to avoid the race to the bottom treadmill of agricultural intensification based on external influence. Yet we also see that there's limited awareness in the region that agroecology offers an alternative paradigm that's realistic and feasible, and also that there aren't many conversations around how to facilitate agroecology transition, not compared to, for example, the types of conversations and activities ongoing in other countries in Europe. We hope to contribute to a conversation and networking with stakeholders in Central Eastern Europe around how agroecology can support climate-friendly and resilient agri-food systems. What are some of the steps we can take to scale agroecological practices, and at the same time, how changes on the demand and the consumption side can facilitate this transition based on agroecology? We hope that the webinars convey a sense of possibility, potential, and hope for the important role that agroecology can play. And we hope that we can perhaps plant a seed for exchange and collaboration to give more voice to the stakeholders working to make sure that this rational hope delivers real change on the ground. So I really warmly thank you and welcome you to this webinar series.